So as I said, there we go. I work on CEA's university groups team. So that's 3 people. That's Jessica, Jake, and I. And what the Center for Effective Altruism does is it tries to support the broad EA community. And I think our sub-team specifically tries to do so through supporting university groups all around the world. So we run programs and all kinds of other things that support these groups and help them flourish, basically. If at any point in time you have any questions for us, we'd love to answer them, or we'd love to get in touch with you. And so then the EA group Slack, which I hope you're on, or just our email address will be the easiest way to reach out. Cool. So in the talk, I hope to cover 3 main things. First, shortly, why do we think university groups are important? Just kind of a reminder of like, this is why we spend so much time and money on making sure these groups go well. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit on on other groups? Are they totally different, like city groups? Are they totally different?
Cool. Good question. Yeah. Do you mind if I do that at the end?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Cool. Nice. Thanks. I'll cover mostly university group stuff, but also a little bit of other things at the end, if that's okay. Yeah. Second part of the talk will be what we think the characteristics of good groups are, good EA university groups. But I think some of this flows over to other kinds of groups. And then lastly, I'll like outline some of the main projects that are out there. That's kind of the plan for today. Cool. So why are university groups important? And I'd love to hear it from you guys. So yeah, what do you think? Get them early. Nice. Yeah, I'll have some version of that in my answer. Yeah. Yeah, come through.
I mean, people need guidance and they can't get it, so maybe it's good to give them guidance.
Yeah, that's right. So you mean students who are interested in EA need guidance? Yeah.
Like they don't know what to do and they're just seeking for like career advice, and maybe they can do something good as well and they get a career.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good reason for EA university groups. Yeah. Any other reasons?
There are many talented people at the universities.
Exactly.
Good in the world.
Nice, yeah. I think this together is almost sort of our answer, indeed. I think the core claim indeed comes down to something like, uni groups are helpful because they like facilitate or allow talented students to get into impactful careers. And I think the like more fleshed out version of that covers a bunch of the things you guys have just said. So firstly, at university, people are usually in a time of their life where they're like open to new ideas and they have time to explore different directions. I think you've always seen this throughout history. So this is a good time to like reach out to people. Then I think like importantly, it's like a period in your life when you're considering your priorities. You're like making first steps. You're still pretty idealistic and you're thinking about what change you want to see in the world. And that's a good moment for us to introduce our ideas and our ways of seeing how what change needs to happen. And I think related, people have like a lot more flexibility to still like venture into some other path than at other stages in people's lives. So it's like another good reason that's related. The third one is, I think it's a time in your life when you're like developing friendships and like a peer group that you stick with for a long time. And I personally noticed that like the friends I made at university are now really important and like helping me like continue to be excited about EA, for example. They're like there for me if I have questions or struggles or whatever. And that's been really important. And I think EA university groups provide this like network for people for later on. And I think what this should look like in the end is just like in-person communities, which I think is valuable. And then like, yeah, these like trustworthy, good sort of friendship groups, I guess. That's what we're kind of aiming for. And I think this like combines some of the things you said. We get them early in some way, and the other things you guys mentioned. There's also data I wanted to say on this, so it's not just like some hypothetical model, but Open Philanthropy, a big funder in the space, ran a survey a couple years ago, and it turns out that people doing especially long-termist work, the survey was run along long-termists, just like credit a lot of their like sort of impact to their university groups. That's where they learned about the ideas. That's where they got more engaged. Maybe that's what helped them like sustain motivation. So there's like data to back this like hypothesis and set of claims. So in short, this is why we're excited about university groups. Are there any like clarification questions? Actual questions, please put them in the app. Cool. Okay, then I'll move on to the second part. What are the characteristic of good groups? What do we think these groups should look like? And again, I'm curious for your guys' first intuitions.
Include people with different backgrounds.
Nice. Yeah, so a diverse sort of group on campus. Yeah. Open.
New people and new ideas.
Yeah, yeah, I'll cover that as well. Thanks. Any other takes? Yeah. Well organized. Yeah, having their stuff together, you mean? Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think that's in here, but it's a good point. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think our sort of version of this, or at least this is kind of the advice that we give new organizers, is we want you to have a truth-seeking community. So we want people that are like open and very humble, especially early on, and very honest about their uncertainties. But also, I think a good part of truth-seeking is the actual seeking. So the like wanting to learn more stuff. And I think, yeah, in the past, maybe we haven't seen this as much as university groups where like organizers themselves are really invested in trying to find the answer to like important object level questions. So this is something we're trying to have more organizers do. So that's like one quality we'd like to see. Then I think it's really important that you build a community. So like foster like good social bonds on your campus, but do that around EA ideas, right? So this like way of looking at the world and these ways of trying to do good should be like core to your group, basically. And I think related to that is when you build that community, something lots of new organizers maybe like is kind of unintuitive for is like focus on the people that are like really committed to these ideas and very interested, and make sure they have all the resources they need to take their like EA journey as far as they want. So maybe that starts with just like doing an interfellowship, and then you like figure out who's actually committed and interested, and then you maybe start suggesting internships, or you help them apply to an EAGX event, or you have a one-on-one with them, or a bunch of one-on-ones, or give them some initial career advice. And yeah, this like focusing on people that are really committed seems really important and has historically been very successful. And I think related to what you were saying earlier is like, we want your group to be a serious place, right? These problems are like messed up and we care about them very deeply. So there's like a good reason to be very serious in what you do, but you want to be approachable. You want to make sure that people don't like not engage with your group for like bad reasons, I guess. I'm happy to expand more later. But I think this comes down to like the diversity point that was made earlier. Yeah, I think these are some of the key characteristics that we like to see at groups. And I'm happy to talk more about them later. Real quick, any other clarification questions? Okay, then I'll head to the last part of the presentation, which is kind of like outlining the support that's out there. And before I like jump into specific programs, I just wanted to like broadly outline the sort of categories of things that are out there, because I think that might be helpful, because maybe there's like one or two categories that you never thought about it in this way. And that might be a good place to start looking if you're looking for help. I think the first kind of support that's out there is just, the slide's a bit messed up, but is financial, pretty straightforward. And I think like finding what's financial support is out there is quite straightforward, because it's just on the group's resource center that you've probably all seen. So it's quite easy, I would say. There's like all other kinds of resources. And here I mean more like information sort of. So there's like lots of guides available online, lots of websites. There's really good forum posts about do's and don'ts and like people's experiences running their groups. And there's useful newsletters, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like another kind of support that you might think of. There's mentorship out there. This is through some of our programs. So at CEA, there's also informal stuff, of course, maybe within your city or your national group. There's programs like Gwenben for specific like underrepresented groups in EA. So there's mentorship out there as well. There's lots of regular programs that are super useful. So I'm thinking of things like AGI safety fundamentals that's just like recurring, that's like helpful for you as an organizer, but also for some of your group members. So that's like a resource that you can use. But also things like giving games are always out there. ADK career coaching is ongoing. These are all kinds of like regular programs that might help you and organize your group. And there's irregular programs as well. So for example, the conference that we're at now or other kinds of conferences, there's always retreats and unconferences going on. So it's quite irregular. So like planning, I think, around those things is really important, but they're like super useful for you to organize your group and get people into high impact careers. I think the last one is quite straightforward, but there's lots of Slack spaces also for like object level things. And I think it's like, if you're trying to learn more about AI safety, it's like useful to join an AI safety Slack space or whatever. Yeah, I think I probably missed one or two like kinds of support, but I hope this like gives a little bit of an outline. and now I'm like heading into some of the specific programs that I think are really useful if you're organizing a group. Cool. So CEA runs UGAP, which stands for the University Group Accelerator Program. And basically this is like a starter kit for you trying to run a group on a campus that doesn't exist yet. So say you're at the University of, I don't know, like Bucharest, and you're like, I want to start a group and no group exists here yet, then our program gives you all the tools that you need to start your group and get it going. And yeah, I'll quickly list some of the things that are in there. So there's lots of resources, there's like trainings we provide, and there's like a very good guide with like lots of advice that we kind of shield off from it's not just like out there open on the internet. So if you get into our program, there's like additional resources that we can help you with. There is, we provide you with a mentor. So you'll have a great chance to, on a weekly basis, starting like before your semester starts, talk to a mentor, which I think is super helpful because they'll help you like plan your semester, and they'll like help you with some accountability stuff, help you think through important strategic questions. So I think that's very helpful. And I think that's one of the key parts of UGAP that's been really, really helpful to organizers. There's a stipend for organizers, potentially, and there's group funding available if you get accepted into UGAP. And so altogether, I think you can see how this is kind of a starter pack to get you going. And it's just really cool to see how people who like maybe learned about EA half a year ago will like apply to our program, they'll get in, and then half a year later, they suddenly have this cool ass like campus group. And I think that's like great progress that you can see. And that's a good reason, I think, for people to apply to UGAP. You can find more information here. So it's effective.org/UGAP. Cool. Then there's like a second part to this. There used to be a program called OSP that was like the Organizer Support Program, which was kind of like a trial that we did about, I think like we were trying to figure out how we can support university organizers beyond their first semester on their campus. And we called this the Organizer Support Program. We like tried it, and then now we're making some edits, and we're kind of like working it into UGAP. And so if you're at a group that has been existing for a longer time, and you're still like, man, I could really use a mentor or some other kinds of support, UGAP is now also kind of for you. So again, if you go to that link right there, you can find more information. And I'm happy we're like trialing this out now, because it seems like lots of experienced organizers or organizers, like maybe new organizers at groups that have been existing for 10 years, can just also use a lot of help still. So it's out there. It mostly will be mentorship, but maybe also some additional resources. And I think, unfortunately, we'll like start doing it for people that are like working quite a lot of hours. I do think that the 20 hours that I put there might be a little bit too high. But if you're putting in like some significant amount of hours, I would really consider applying, just because it will be very helpful, as we've seen in the past. Cool. That's UGAP. Then just wanted to outline other kinds of support that CEA provides before I move on to other things in the space. There's the groups newsletter, which comes out once a month. And I think that's like, for me, it's been one of the best resources, because there's people like working all year round trying to combine all the best information that all group organizers should know about. And so, yeah, definitely subscribe to that newsletter. It's just a great way to stay in the loop of what's happening. The second one is the resource center that I told you about. This is just a website. We might like do a revamp soon. We might also not do a revamp soon, but the website is out there, and there's just so much useful information on there. So it's another thing you can join. One thing I didn't put up here is the EA group Slack, which I think is like underused, but there's like so much knowledge there because there's so many organizers from around the world, and just putting some of your questions on there is just really, really helpful. Another thing that we do is just group support, which is a financial thing. Sorry, I didn't put that on there, but that's like funding for all your like regular group expenses. So as CEA, we think it's like useful for you to have a little bit of money to like have pizza at your event, or like buy or buy some books for like go on a retreat together. So there's some funding available there as well. These are some of the things that we run at CEA, including the EA group Slack, which I think you should join. Cool. That's it for CEA. Maybe I missed one or two things, but I think these are the core ones. Then there's a program from OpenPhil. I'm not speaking on their behalf, of course, but I think it's useful for you to know that there's the University Group Organizer Fellowship. That's what it stands for. And basically, it's just financial support for you as an organizer to allow you to do group organizing and like spend more hours on it than you would have if you didn't get a salary, basically. And yeah, as you'll see when you like go to the website, OpenPhil does this is like does this because of long-termist reasoning. So they're like interested in like long-termist career changes mostly, but they're still happy to fund all kinds of groups just because they think that like even through like rationality groups or like broad EA groups, people might get into long-termist careers, and that's what they're excited about in the end. So yeah, there's a salary and a stipend for your group usually, and this is, as I said, also for like non-EA group organizers, but maybe like EA adjacent stuff. Yeah, I think it's like useful to explore the website a little bit, and even if you're like just working a few hours a week on your group, it's like worth applying, just because it might free up some of your time. It might help you take it more seriously. Yeah, it's been a great resource in the space. And then the last thing I was hoping to cover is just like, I think quickly sort of answering your question, but maybe not covering all the things that'll be helpful. It's just like there is support out there for non-EA groups. It's just like not as like maybe established as the support for EA groups. So obviously there's like AI groups out there. There's a bunch of support in the space, but I haven't found like a nice centralized place where there's like all kinds of advice. It's like quite scattered, but there is stuff out there for sure. And if you're starting an AI group on your campus, please feel free to reach out to us and we can help you with next steps. There's alternative, Yeah, I think the things I wanted to say is like, it's like less, the reason there's fewer resources out there is also because there's less experience. And I'm happy to talk about it in a one-on-one. And then there's alternative protein groups on campuses. The Good Food Institute, GFI, runs a nice program that's kind of like UGAP that helps you start up such a group. And it's really cool because it's like you're doing it kind of like with your university. So it's really exciting. And there's some nice examples of people who like run successful alternative protein groups on their campus. So there's support out there as well through the Good Food Institute. And the last thing is One for the World. So this is more like donation-based stuff. There's like some support system out there as well. The groups are called One for the World, and the thing that supports you is also One for the World. So it's just very easy to Google. This is about like donating 1% of your income as a student, and then hoping that will turn into like donations for a lifetime. Yeah, so these are the like non-EA groups things, like types of support that are out there, and I think I might miss one or two things. So if you're like, I really want to start like a Slate Star Codex group on my campus or something, I'm happy to talk to you, and we can figure out what support is available and what lessons learned you might benefit from. Cool. I think that's it. So yeah, if there's any questions, let's head to SwapCard and see what's out there. And then happy to book a one-on-one. And here's just the link to UGAP again. Thank you. Nice. Cool. There's nothing on SwapCard right now, so maybe we can just do it in person. Yeah, come through.
Thanks for the talk. Yeah, I also was considering putting a SwapCard question, but there was nothing there, so I'm just going to ask.
Nice.
So I'm considering, or rather, I would like to ask your advice. If I'm not a student, and I would maybe like to help set up a university group, and maybe not be so personally involved, but probably have to be a bit involved at the beginning. Do you have any kind of roadmap for that?
Yeah. So I guess for the camera, the question was, as a non-student, how do I like help get university groups going, basically? Yeah, I think internally we're like pretty excited. We have like one good example of someone going out there in a country and like helping other students start groups on campuses, and that just went really well. And there's a forum post out there on this. We called it Seeding New University Groups. I think we can chat one-on-one about this, and the forum post is a good place to start. I can send you a document with more information. So if anyone else is interested in this, in like getting other people on other campuses to start groups and like how you go about finding them and supporting them, we have some lessons learned. Not a ton, but like it's a good place to start. Yeah, does that help? Yeah. Nice, cool. Any other questions I can help with? Yeah.
Any challenges you see in university groups which can be like easily solved, but like some people don't know how?
Yeah, so what are like challenges that can easily be solved but people usually don't do? I think a bunch of that was like in the advice I gave earlier. So like the things we tell starting university group organizers are usually just like mistakes they often make. So this is a while back, but I think the main one is like not focusing on the people that are like most interested. Yeah, there you go. So I think like one intuition that I had as a group organizer, I like started in my university group and I was like, oh man, these ideas are amazing and everyone in the world should like understand them. And as long as I like sell them right and I do my marketing well, everyone on my campus is going to be EA and will want to contribute to solving the world's biggest problems just because these ideas make so much sense. And I think it's like a shared intuition for lots of people when you start your group. But unfortunately, it's just not true. Like a lot of people on your campus will just not be interested in this stuff. And I think like kind of accepting that you'll go out there with these ideas and like very few people will buy it is kind of annoying. But on the other hand, it's like if at the end of your semester you got like one or two people very excited about EA ideas and they wouldn't have known about this or like wouldn't have been as excited if it wasn't for you. That's like amazing progress in the world. If you get one or two people into EA careers and like do good stuff for animals or for future generations or for the global poor, that's really cool. And doing that on the side as a student is just amazing progress. And I think that's like one sort of thing that we try to convey, but it's like a little bit unintuitive. So it's like a mistake, I guess. Yeah. I'm curious if there's other examples of people thinking like, oh, I've seen other people do this, and that seems like a mistake. That's okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you also have resources for non-university groups?
Do we have resources for non-university groups? Yeah.
City groups
Yeah.
or
Um,
career, working professionals group? I'm more interested in city groups.
More interested in city groups. Yeah. So what advice is out there for non-university groups? I think a bunch of the lessons just still apply, like focusing on the people who get it, but other things like don't apply. I think the theory of exchange is slightly different. The context is slightly different. I think a lot of the resources on the EA Resources Center are very useful. And then I think just on the EA group Slack, there'll be lots of advice that's useful. Yeah, I like don't feel very qualified to like give you specific types of advice now, but I do think some of the things I've said generalized to university or to non-university groups. Like you want like a truth-seeking culture. You want organizers to also be learning and to like show by example. Like we make progress in the world by learning about object-level stuff. So those are some examples. I'm happy to put you in touch with someone who will have better answers. Yeah.
I would, especially for this, I would be interested in the funding aspect for like city groups, funding for city groups.
Yeah. So there's funding for city groups. There's like regular group support for the like pizza and stuff that we talked about. Just regular group support. And that's, you can find that on the Resources Center. And then I know the EA Infrastructure Fund, even though like things might be changing there soon, so keep an eye on the forum, is sometimes able to like provide funding for city group organizers, for example, as well. Yeah, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So this again is just all on the EA Group's Resources Center. Yeah.
Not so long ago, before EAG London, CA was running this 1-week training for US organizers, right?
Before EAG London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of our committee members was rejected, and I think what she was told is that you were looking for more experienced US organizers there. Is it like the case? Or like, what kind of US organizers were you looking for at that retreat? Or like,
Yeah. So the question is like there was a retreat before EAG London, and like what was kind of like the crowd basically. Yeah, I think in our work we always have to like make pretty hard trade-offs. Like what kind of organizers do we want to support with the three of us and the little time that we have? Do we want like broad resources that any group organizer wherever in the world they are and whatever university they go to they can use, or do we want to like maybe support like a select group of people? And I think over the past year, most of our work has been on supporting like a very broad range of university group organizers. So for example, through UGAP, but also our like regular funding support and our EA group Slack and all that stuff is like useful for all organizers in the world. But I think there's a good reason to argue that maybe like focusing on some of the like traditional top universities a little bit more makes sense from like a perspective of wanting to do as much good in the world as possible. And I think this retreat was one of the first examples of us focusing on that a little bit more since like we started doing stuff over the past year. So that's why I was like pretty focused on like traditional top university organizers and people who've been organizing there for a longer time.
so
Yeah.
from top universities and organizers for a long time.
Yeah, I think so. And also the retreat spaces are just quite small. So we can let as many people in as we want to. Yeah. We're running out of time. Amazing, cool. If there's more questions, I'm happy to answer them outside. Yeah, thank you for all your good questions and for organizing your groups on your campuses. That's amazing work. Thanks.